welcome back to the Comics Are Dope podcast. I'm your host, BJ Kicks. I'm joined by my co-host, Skip, and a special guest who we will introduce in just a moment. But if you're watching this on YouTube, this is exciting. This is our first video podcast, and I'm excited about it. We've got the first of hopefully many guests, but an esteemed guest in his own right, and I'm very excited about this episode. If you can tell, I'm very unprofessional right now. I thought I had a nice intro, and then I was like, not quite. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our guest after I ask my man Skip. Yo, how you doing?
Man, how am I doing? I'm excited, man. Especially have the guest that we have here. His current comic book issue #2 of Torrent came out this week. The colorist is Rico Renzi, so I'm repping his shirt right here, Martin the Martian. So I'm just excited, and I'll let you introduce him.
Bet. So our guest today is an illustrator. He's been in the industry for quite some time. He's actually been really busy. You may know him from such titles as Stumptown. Maybe you read Burnouts. Maybe you read that issue of Future State Gotham. Or maybe you picked up Torrent issue #1. But today we're talking to Justin Greenwood.
What's up?
Man, how you doing today?
Burnouts, man. I did a cover for Burnout. I gotta say, I didn't draw Burnouts, in fairness, but I did draw a cover for it.
Gotcha.
Fairness to Dennis, my old pal Dennis, who we work together periodically. But
Nice. Oh, this cover.
I'm just excited to be esteemed. I don't remember the last time I was esteemed. This is a big moment for me.
First time, man. First time.
That is great. So, I mean, we're going to keep this real casual. I mean, we're a bunch of nerds. And Skip and Justin go way back, apparently. I'm the only one new to this convo. But
well, it's exciting.
Right. I guess we'll start with the softball question, man. Like, so where'd you first fall in love with comics and decide, like, maybe you had a shot at drawing them?
Yeah, I think, I had a brother who lived in Arizona, and he would come on the summers to come visit, and he would bring his box of comics. And I remember he had like all the early like X-Men, Wolverine, like the stuff that really for me now is real formative. Like I just got really into it. And my dad was really into magazines. He was an artist, and he wasn't into comics at all, but he would drag us out to the magazine shop, which I feel like is not so common anymore. But when I was a kid, there were magazine shops everywhere where, you could, like, whatever your hobby was, there was a magazine for it. And he was into custom painting and pinstriping and, like, biker magazines, lowrider magazines, anything that kind of used his art form. He was into racing. And so he'd basically just he'd go, and I swear he would buy a stack of magazines, and he would just drop us off in front of the comic rack, and we would just sit there and go over the comic rack like a fine-tuned comb or whatever the expression is. Just really be reading everything. But the stuff I got really into was Marvel comics. I was way into X-Men. I still have my old runs from back in the day. And I don't know when I made crossover from like enjoying reading them to thinking about drawing them. But I love to draw from early on too, because art was always in our household, and we would talk about drawing a lot. But I guess at some point pretty early on, I started tracing the comics and thinking like, oh man, I bet you I could do this if I really put my mind to it. And it took me a long time to get started, but once I did, I went full steam ahead.
Got you. So then, what was that path like, and what were you doing in the meantime? Right, you say you took a long time to get started. I assume you started a career maybe in other ways.
Yeah. Well, I worked a produce job for a long time, and I put myself through school. I mean, I had a period in my 20s where I think I just needed to not do anything and just sort of get my feet on the ground and get some life under my belt. And we got into a lot of mischief in my early 20s. But there was a point when I was always drawing still, and I just felt like, I'm letting this opportunity go by. I love drawing, and if I don't make this effort to really make this a career instead of talking about it, it's just gonna go by, and I'll be bummed out. So I signed up for art school because I just needed the discipline. I think you can get into art lots of different ways. I don't think art school is necessary, but for me it was like I just needed somebody to make me practice, like really like practice all day long. And the strides I took, that like the improvement I had was so fast and so much at that time that sometimes I feel like I'm just still trying to capture that momentum 15, 20 years later and really continue to learn, continue to get better, because that journey never really stops.
Word. So like when I think of art school, I think of like people just learning just real classical stuff, right? Like I guess the only comparison I have is I grew up around like music, right? And so when I went to college, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna finally take piano class. Like I'm gonna learn how
Hmm.
to play piano, and I'll go get in the classroom and like just trying to wrap my head around music theory. It just didn't work. Like I sucked at
Mm.
learning piano, even though like I could play certain things by ear and so on. And I feel like art could potentially be like the same way. Like we've all taken. I don't know if we've all taken art classes, but you learn shading and values and all those things, in like elementary school or whatever. But at a certain point, you start to take like, an art curriculum, and then you're learning all these different things that maybe aren't what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so then when I'm looking at like comics, you know, I guess you can see like certain fundamentals in everyone, but everyone's got a different style, a different sort of look. How do you equate like the art school experience? How do you feel like it lends itself to what you
Um,
end up doing?
yeah. Well, I think you're right on about that. One thing for me, I had the benefit of being older. Like I wasn't old exactly, but I was in my like maybe mid-20s or something. I wasn't a teenager, and I was paying for it myself.
Mm,
I think it's a little different when your folks send you to college right out of high school. You don't really have a sense for like what that costs, or like if I don't know, the commitment level is different. When you're doing it for yourself and you're
yeah.
paying for it yourself, you put both feet in, and if you've made that decision, you're going all the way. And I think the way that school taught just really suited my sensibility. It really worked on the foundations, and then you apply those foundations in a lot of different ways. Like you take those initial classes, and you could kind of go off in any direction, and you you could apply them a lot of different ways. I was interested in comics, and that was the thing I wanted to do the most. But if I hadn't found a career in comics, maybe I would have done book illustration or magazines or art for something else. And occasionally I do that stuff when it comes up. But you know, I graduated college in like 2005, and there just wasn't a huge comics program then either. I mean, the comics landscape has changed so much too. I
Mm,
mean, traditional illustration, there were a lot of different avenues you could take, but comics was by far the least desirable. When you would talk to teachers who'd be like, that's the hardest work to get. Generally pays the least. It's really time intensive, and those things are true. Um, but I felt like if I don't start with the thing I love the most, then I'm kind of cheating myself just because I'm afraid of how it's going to work out. It's better to really just go for it, and then we'll just see. And I gave myself a few years to kind of break in and see if I had that ability. And it was like I started hitting conventions, and like I was putting a portfolio together and doing shows. And I would do like a few a year and take that feedback and kind of rework things and come back out again. And I think it was after 2 or 3 years I got my first job. But I mean, I don't know. I needed comics. Also, doesn't have a very clear break-in way either. It's not like you can ask 10 different comic artists how they broke in. They're all going to tell you a different story. And so I think because that's the case, it feels like the Wild West. Everything seems like it takes extra long. But once you're rolling and you have something under your belt that you can point to and say, this is what I do, it gets a lot easier. You know?
word, word.
Right on. So question, of course, naturally, as we're going down this timeline, you get to school, you get disciplined. Of course, when you get out of school, like you said, take some years, you give yourself some time to break in. But while you're at school, one of the
Yeah.
most important things there is building relationships. If I could ask, who are some of the people that you ended up, meeting while you were at school and built relationships with?
Yeah. It's funny. I think this is also a byproduct of being older, getting there too. But like, I made a lot of friends there, but I can count on one hand how many of those people I still know right this minute. But I had a few teachers who left a really big impression on me, and I still think about them often. I had this one teacher. He's passed now. This guy Kazusano was just an incredible illustrator. I was just talking about him at Emerald City last weekend because he was on my mind. I was talking with the person I was sitting next to just about going to school, what those experiences are like, and I found with art school a lot of times you either get a really good teacher or you get a good artist, but you rarely get a good teacher who's a good artist. I feel like there would be two different. You'd either get one or the other. All the teachers either did one of those things really well, but not both. Not often.
Mm,
And Kazu was that rare case where he really was super talented, could be doing anything he wanted pretty much, and he still wanted to be there teaching because he loved to share the knowledge. And man, I love that. I really took that to heart. I try and live by that same sensibility and same mentality. When I meet people who are trying to figure out how to get in, I try and help them get in, because it is an unusual thing, and your heart's on the line every time. I mean, your ego is so tied into what you're doing. Like, you may draw something and love it. It doesn't mean everybody else is going to love it. And so every time you're showing it around, you know, it's nerve wracking, and I appreciate how much guts it takes to do that, because I remember doing that and just being it can be brutal. The other thing about art school that taught me to have is a real thick skin, because you take these critiques where everything you work on you put up, and people compare notes on it, and whether they like it or not is kind of irrelevant. I mean, you did it and it's done, but whether you can't control what they think about it, and you're going to hear every opinion, even if it's a dumb opinion. Sometimes it's a great one. You know, you just never know. But it did make me durable.
It sounds like you went to school on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's as catty as Twitter is, for sure.
Man. So that's funny. It's funny though, because so art school taught you to have thick skin, or at least helped you develop it. You almost talk about art school like people talk about the army, right? Like, I needed discipline. I needed to just like learn how to like put myself on a rigorous schedule, learn how to self-manage, self-motivate.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I've never really heard of school being talked about in that way.
Well, I think too, on that same level, if you can find a way to manage your time and get through art school, get your work done, build this thing, and still have a full-time or part-time job or whatever, you're going to be so ready for the workforce when the time comes to actually try and get work. Because, you know, there's one thing about me you can say with certainty is I'm not going to blow a deadline. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And that is a quality that is not specific to the arts, but the arts generally has a tough time with that mind frame. And I know, just going through that experience, it really reinforced how important that is, and that work ethic. That part doesn't really go away no matter what I'm doing. And for me, that was really useful.
You know, and to that point, like, you definitely have that reputation. I remember I was hanging out with Dragata at his house one time, and we were just kind of talking about like projects and project management and stuff. And he was like, "Oh man, I'm not the person that you want to talk to about that. You want to go talk to Justin about that. That guy is a workhorse. He makes me look lazy." And
that's not exactly true, but that's not something to say though. He's a worker too, man. He's always doing something new.
Yeah, he definitely is. But when he pointed that out and he was like, "Look how many projects he has coming out," I was like, when does this guy sleep? Doesn't he have a family? Like, when does this guy like take a break, man? And, and then you know what was funny too? Then Ramon was doing his Mex Flintalo podcast, and he would like, I could tell sometimes he would like just like randomly throw one together. And every time he invited you on when it was live, you were always at your table drawing. And also on the podcast.
Well, it's true though. If we're doing a chat or something, I'm definitely out here, because otherwise it's too distracting in the house. Anyway, I have 2 kids. You know, they're good kids, but it's wild having children. Like, you just have no control. I mean, both of you know. Like, it's just you can't control your environment. And I do have I will say I have the good fortune of having a studio space that's next to the house, but it's separate, right? So I can come out here and do what I need to do here and mentally be here, and then close it down and hopefully leave it here and go back and be present for my family. I mean, theoretically, it doesn't always happen. I'm not perfect at it, but that's definitely a skill set you have to learn too. If you're going to do comics, I don't see another way. No one's making you do anything. You have to you have to want to do it, and you have to have the presence of mind to be able to turn it on and off when you need to. Compartmentalize, I guess, you know. I mean, that's probably anybody who owns their own business, right, is probably the same thing.
Yeah. I think those words definitely ring off even more now that we're in like this post-pandemic, everyone works from home world.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah, we're built for this. When they had a pandemic, we were like, all right. I mean, everybody's worked from home, but that part of things just felt like that I can do. Right. It's dealing with having the kids home and helping them with their school. That was the challenge, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I was fine being at home. I'm fine. Like, all right, cool. I got my little home office. I'm recording my videos. I'm doing this and that. I was absolutely not used to my wife like, oh, babe, look at this funny video. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
what are we doing right now?
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that you're not alone. I mean, you're fine being by yourself doing it, but when you have to share that space with other people is another thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess while we're on the subject, do you have tips for artists for like, I guess, keeping their head to the grindstone and like just getting that work done? Are there things that you do to prioritize your time?
Um, yeah, I mean, the most common question people say how to break into comics. I feel like the most common answer is just keep practicing. Like, I mean, you just got to make the comics, and in the process of making them, you're going to learn so much. Just doing it for yourself. That if you have the willpower to do that on your own, you're going to have no problem when a publisher starts paying you to do it. But it's a good barometer for how serious you are about it, right?
Facts.
Yeah.
All right, Skip, I'm gonna let you take the next question while I pour over Justin's resume over here.
You got it. You got it. So speaking of your resume, the guy that tag teamed the article that we did on the Comics Are Dope website, my buddy Bunkmaster B, he loves your book Fuse. And I
Oh,
remember
cool.
you saying that was like, your first series that you did with Anthony that kind of really got you out there. But, what did it look like right up until you got Fuse? What was that kind of era of your career
Yeah.
looking like?
That is a good question because it really has a very specific answer. I had been working in comics at that point. I was working a day job where I would work produce in the morning, and then I'd go to work from like 3 or 4 in the morning to like 1 or 2, either noon to 2 sometime. And I come home and draw comics when I got home. And I was doing Resurrection at that point. I had done Wasteland and maybe some of Stringers. I don't remember. But I remember feeling like, man, I kind of have one foot in, 1 foot out right now, and it's challenging. I'm making this extra hard. But I wasn't making enough money in comics to do it as a career. And I was making a living, but it just wasn't enough. And I was supplementing with my other job. But I just felt like, man, I need to make a decision. Either I need to figure out a way to really commit to this full time and go for it, or I need to just recognize what I'm dealing with, find something that's more full time, and kick comics back to something I do when I can make the time. And hopefully I'll make enough time to stay in it. And I remember really having, and that conversation I was having with myself happened to coincide with having just had my daughter at that point was like almost 2. Melissa was pregnant. We were about to have another one, and I'm just like, I need to make a decision on what I'm doing because we're getting to this point where I'm not just responsible for myself anyway. I gotta really knuckle down. And around that time, Anthony had reached out about doing the Fuse, and it corresponded with James Lucas Jones from Oni Press reaching out about potentially doing Stumptown. And I just felt like, if I were to take on both of these projects and space them out in such a way to where I could manage both of them, I feel like that would give me enough runway to make enough of a living. If one of the books doesn't work, I still can go back and just stay with the other one. And it was the last straw for me where I felt like I could see the road ahead well enough to go full time into comics. Yeah, it was awesome, and it was a decision my wife and I had in a serious way because like I don't want to fail, right? Like I want to have a family. I don't want to screw this thing up, but I know what I want to do in my heart, and she's very supportive of that too. She loves that I love drawing that much, and so. At that time, that's when I made that. When I started the Fuse, around the time I started the Fuse is about the time I stopped working another job and just went full time into it, and it was awesome. And the book was awesome. Like Anthony and I had already worked together on Wasteland for like a couple arcs, and I felt like I knew him well. I knew his writing well. I was excited for the project. It was. And it was already set up at Image. Like by the time him and I started talking about it, it already had a home. Like we didn't have to formally pitch it; it was already pitched, and I was able to just jump right in. And I loved the book. I thought it was fun. We still talk about it often as something we'd love to return to because the story there was so much room to tell other stories in that world that I don't know. We fantasized about coming back to it sometime down the road. We did 4 books. I mean, it ran for a pretty good amount of time. But yeah, it was awesome. Totally awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah, because like you said, it's a specific thing. It's like when you're right there on the precipice and you're like, okay, I got my toes off. Do I leap and see how far my wings can take me, or
Yeah.
do I turn back and say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna actually commit to this, and I'm gonna find a place for my love, but it's gonna have to be somewhere on the back burner on the weekends or something like that. So it's really cool to see, like how you had a spiritual, almost emotional faith in yourself to push you to do it, but then methodically, you also thought it out and
Yeah.
approached it from that point. So that's
Yeah,
great.
I'm practical, right? I mean, like ultimately, I have to. I can't just tell everyone have faith too, because it's a tough thing to do. But as long as I can see that it is possible, if it's up to me to figure it out, I'll really do my best. So it's just a matter of trying to find that way in. And fortunately, I mean, knock on wood, it's worked out. It's been, I think, almost 10 years that I've been full time at it. And I had maybe 4 or 5 years before that where I was kind of like figuring it out. But a lot of that is just learning the language of comics better and better. I read comics since I was a little kid, but making them and really intuitively understanding that pacing and process, that takes practice. And that gets back to that thing about breaking in, right? I mean, it's the same practice everyone can be doing if they really want to bad enough,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, trying to figure out how I want to ask this question, right?
Oh,
So,
good. I love a question that requires tact. That's got to be exciting.
nah, so I'm the comic noob, right? And so my entryway into comics was very much big two superheroes, right?
Yeah.
And Skip has kind of just been like my older brother in the fandom, like, hey, but check this thing out though. Check out this guy. And so he's often like just kind of throwing me these lobs, and I'm like, okay, I'll read it because Skip said read it, right? And so that's how Torrent came across my radar.
Thanks. Nice.
And I love it, by the way, through 2 issues. I just read issue 2 today.
Oh, cool.
And what's funny, it's a superhero story. It's not a big two superhero. It's got a very interesting twist at the end of issue 2 that I don't want to spoil for people. But it's dope. The action's great. The art it's really frenetic. Like this page. This is my favorite page on issue 2.
Oh, nice. Thanks. Cool.
Like it's just the hero. Her name is Cracker Jack, which is great. But there's such action. There's just a lot of movement on the page. I also love this page where she's like being thrown to her death
Uh-huh.
off this
Yeah.
building, and you like see her getting smaller and smaller before spoilers happen, right? But anyway, I say all that to say, right? I'm newer to reading indie books, and I'd love to know from you like what the difference is, because you've done some big two work as well, but the difference between like maybe coming up with a story with someone and then pitching that to a publisher versus like, hey, I've got a pitch for this character that someone else owns,
Yeah.
and maybe I'll get a shot on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think I started out in creator-owned books because style-wise, I was the easiest fit. I felt like I could see myself doing those kind of books, or I'd have an easier time selling myself to those publishers initially. But because I kind of was raised in that environment, I came to really enjoy the process of like building this stuff. Like, I mean, every time you're making a book, like Torrent #2 just came out this week, but we started talking about that project maybe a year and a half ago or so. Maybe honestly, Mark and I started talking about doing something else together probably before COVID even. Like it was like San Diego, I think that last San Diego before COVID, him and I caught up at the show and we were just like, man, we should work together again, because Mark and I did the very first thing I got hired for was a book called Resurrection, and that was with Mark Guggenheim also. And that's how we met, and we became friends and stayed in contact, and then we rolled Resurrection into a book called Stringers we did a little while later. And then, it had been a few years. He had been doing a lot of television stuff, and he was still doing comics periodically. But I think this last few years has really marked a big change for Mark, where he wanted to really go hard back into comics. I think he absolutely just loves comics. And so we started talking like, well, what should we do if we have we have a lot of mutual interests and a lot of oh nice, yeah, there's a stringers panel. We have a lot of shared interests in stories. Like, what kind of stories would we want to do? And so Mark shot me a bunch of ideas, and Torrent just jumped off the page at me. I just thought, this is a cool premise for a story. I haven't done superheroes yet. I grew up on superhero books, right? Like most folks my age, anyway. There weren't a lot of creator-owned options anyway. And so that's the stuff you love. And I remember, I grew up in the Bay Area, and I remember my dad taking me my first WonderCon in Oakland in 1992. I think that was in Oakland still. And Image launched, the publisher launched that year, and I had just never even considered that, like, oh geez, these people making these books, I didn't realize there was an issue where they have to answer to somebody. Like that part of the Image launch was be independent, do your own thing, and it never occurred to me that existed. And I went from being a young kid who really thought, like, man, someday I want to draw like Wolverine or X-Men, to being like, man, I want to have an Image book that would be read. Like, I want to build my own world, do my own thing, and my heart just kind of stayed there. Like, I love going over and playing around with the other stuff because it's fun, and it makes you feel like you're doing something grown up when you're contributing to this mythology that's lasted for so long. But genuinely, my heart is in creator-owned comics. I love making something fresh, something new, and as my career has gone on and I get to know a lot of the writers I work with better, most of my projects grow now out of a conversation of, like, wouldn't it be cool if this or that, instead of getting a script that's complete and then adding to it, And right. While there's nothing wrong with the other thing either, it's so much more fun to just build something from scratch and be like, what should we do? Should we do this? Should we do that? And the collaboration, the excitement of putting that stuff together is so rewarding, so awesome. So if I can find a way, I mean, the trick is always whether people will, like, if you can find a publisher for what you think is cool, and hopefully if you think it's cool, you'll find a publisher who also agrees. And then if people read it, like, as long as you can keep putting that together, like, it's a wide open market to kind of do whatever you want. And I've been blessed that we're able to find projects consistently that people want to read, which is really cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as you're kind of explaining these differences, of course, my background before any of this was music. And so this reminds me a lot of, like, all right, am I going to go the major label route, or am I going to, stay indie and just kind of put my projects together, put them out, and so on. I guess the major difference in that conversation is that with a musician deciding to go indie, a lot of how they have to make their bones is, like, direct to fan selling.
Mm-hmm.
But with indie comics, there is still an intermediary in that there's a publisher, right?
Yeah.
How much pressure do you feel to sort of build an audience, build a following, versus, like, okay, or I mean, do you feel pressure to try to find customers, or is it really just about having the idea and having someone that believes in it?
No, that's a good question. That what you're describing, there are outside of, I'm just thinking this through. So you got Big Two would be like the most stable mainstream thing you could do, doing creator-owned books, but finding publishers, something kind of in the middle when you think about it, because you still have folks who are self-publishing their own things, or Kickstarters has grown so significantly because it gives this big open area for people to sell direct to fans.
Right.
I probably should feel more pressure to try to have a better sense of, like, the business side of, like, selling to fans and building that fan base. I think there's a part of me that just feels like if I keep making things that I think are cool, that audience is just going to build with it, and we'll figure it out from there, and trust that the publishers will do a good job on the sales side of things. I find that when I look at the books that sell the best, there's a really big connection between what the writers and the artists are doing and what the fan base, like that. It's less insulated. And so I do feel pressure in the sense that I can see from a business standpoint to make a lot more sense to be more direct. But, some of it is just, like, I don't really, as much as I enjoy that part, like, having a conversation like this is awesome. But I can't spend all day on social media. I just don't have an interest. For one thing, I don't have an interest in it. Genuinely, don't care for it. Like I like being on Twitter for a little while and talking to people, but I can't put on a show. Like I just don't have the time. I don't know. I have kids. I'm working on a million things. That's the thing I want to be doing. The rest of it, if I were better at that, it would definitely help every project I work on. But like, there's a certain point where you're only willing to give so much. And I guess for me, I just found a medium that kind of works in the middle. Because the thing I really want to be doing is drawing the books in the first place. In terms of selling them, it's sort of a different skill set. It's not a skill set. It's a skill set I understand. It's not a skill set I have, but it's something I've worked on because I kind of have to. If I'm going to if I'm going to be collaborating with people, I don't want to be the one who's not taking care of their end of like actively trying to sell this stuff.
Right.
Does that make sense? It's kind
Absolutely.
of a long-winded answer. But.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think you said a key thing that I started to think about too, where you said, like what your skill set is. You have some people that may be a little more hip or a little more ear to the ground or have their way how they find out what people are really into and excited about, but may not produce as much. And then, you got someone more on your side who like you're a workhorse, you find your collaborators that you enjoy working with. You guys pair really well. You get straight to business. You're able to get the book out to the people. Yeah. And like you said, you're like, hey, whoever the publisher is, I'm going to let you, work your area of expertise, go ahead and market the book, get it out to people and everything. And I'm going to get back to making sure that you guys got another Justin Greenwood book, next quarter to get out.
And honestly, it's not altruistic at all. It's selfish, right? But like but that is the honest answer. I look at somebody like Chip Zdarsky. That dude is such a personality. He's putting together newsletters that are funny. Every one of those things is funny. He's funny online. He works. He seems to work constantly. I don't know him. I don't know all his projects, but it seems like he's announcing something new frequently. Mm-hmm. And I admire that skill set. Like he's not a salesman in the sense that he's trying to sell you, but you like him. You want to keep up with what he's doing, and he's good at it. But I also know that I don't do that well. It would feel like work to do that. Like I don't need it. It feels like another job, and at this point, I just don't want to take on another job. So I guess I find a way to be available, get that stuff out there, but then make sure I'm not giving up the time that I have to actually do the work I really want to do.
Exactly.
But that hustle is absolutely a function of being in creator-owned comics. Like I think if you're working for Marvel or DC, that machine is so well built that thing it'll promote the books sell themselves in the sense that as long as the work you're doing is good, people are buying them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But no, I think that's key really in any industry that you get in, but especially creative ones. Find your lane, see what the parameters are and how you can work that lane the best that you can and stick in that lane. Because I think we've all seen the stories of people that tried to go too far outside of their bounds and what they're really interested in and get wrecked. So
or they decide they're going to make a big splash and they just fall around their faces. They just do something crazy because they think there's just that it's so far outside of what they understand. And there's something to be said for growing that and making that effort too. Like I'm not. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's impossible. And I feel like I have tried to do better that as time has gone on. But ultimately, man, it's just not the part of the job I like. I mean, I think most folks who draw just love to be left alone to draw. And it's an illness, but we love it,
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I get it. I mean, creators like to create, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love having these conversations, getting the podcast together. You know what I hate? Ironically, reaching out to people to schedule podcasts.
Funny. I can see that though.
Favorite thing. And the same. I don't like the back and forths with like potential sponsors who are like, all right, we'll give you this much for an episode. And can you edit this or can you say it like that? Like, I hate it. I just want to record my show, talk to the people in the audience, have fun with the chat and, then go back home to my family. So I totally get that. So, all right. So let's talk about, well, I guess we kind of did this already. We talked about Torrent, but I guess I'd like to know how you go about choosing projects. Because, I mean, you talked about we're doing creator-owned projects, so you kind of get to you get a lot of leeway in the stories that you want to tell, you want to sign on for. What is it
Yeah.
about a writer's script or idea that speaks to you and is like, yeah, I want to draw that?
Um, yeah. Well, I think project to project, I usually am looking for something different than the last thing I did, and I want to try. Like doing superheroes was so exciting because after 15 years of drawing comics, I still hadn't really done a superhero book, but I love that world, those worlds. So I thought, oh, that would be fun. And the next thing I'm doing is a horror book, which I have never done before, and part of it is just the challenge of like just doing something that is outside of the regular rhythm, but and it has its own specific pacing challenges or its own specific storytelling things that sound like fun to me. Because the one thing I don't want to do is get bored just doing the same stuff all the time. And then in terms of who I work with, there are so many great writers. I don't often get a script first. Usually I end up just kind of talking to folks, and there are so many people I want to work with because I think either they're a great writer or they're somebody I'm really friendly with and I like their writing, and I think like, oh, we could probably meld together really well. Like you just get a sense of rhythm, like personality wise, and just think like, oh, to work together would be really exciting. So I'm just thinking about all the projects like at this moment. Torrent, I'm done drawing Torrent for now, and I probably have like 3 or 4 other projects that are on my schedule in like various levels of development. One that I'm drawing that already has a home, one that I'm getting ready to draw that has a home that I need to start on, and then I have a couple of things that are in development that are just ideas that we're working up and getting ready to pitch for down the road. And I think that's another part about being in creator-owned comics too. Like you're always working on one thing, but you are thinking about 5 other ones because you know that this one thing is going to end. You're going to need to line the next one up, and it's fun. I always describe it in a very practical way, but like the truth is, I love it. Like it's so much fun to do this stuff, So yeah. So anyhow, to answer your question, I talk to a lot of writers at this point, a lot of other creative people, and when somebody pitches me an idea that I feel like hits me a certain way, if I really like when I read the pitch for Torrent, I just thought like this is a killer idea, and I remember telling Mark like, man, I think this could make a great comic, and then he spent a little time putting together a more formal outline of what he thought that would look like, and like just that building, and like, oh, you see all these pieces and you go, man, that would be awesome, and it was even bigger and more exciting than I had initially thought of it when he broke it down. I thought this is going to be rad, and so. I sent him back notes on stuff that I think, oh, this could be cool, maybe this, maybe that. And just that building is, by the time you're done and the book comes out, it's awesome because you're like, man, it really happened. Like we really did. We went from talking about this thing to making this thing over a course of a couple of years.
Yes. Okay, I want to be a little selfish for like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so number one, going back I guess really 2 books because we had Area 510.
Yep.
That came out. Such an awesome, nice standard hardcover, kind of novella style story. People who haven't checked it out, highly advise checking it out. It's a little bit of a love letter to that part of the Bay Area, the 510 area code and everything. I highly advise checking it out.
Also, shout out to Ramon Villalobos for the name. He's the one who came up with that name. I have to give him credit. Jay Faber and I are the ones who did that book, but when we were trying to figure out the name, we were shooting towards Skyline, so I thought, because it's a street, it's like a long street in Oakland too, as well known, and I thought that's a good name, but Ramon came with Area 510, and just it stuck, and I feel like if I don't make a point of mentioning that, he's going to be pissed because there's one person who's possible to watch this. It might be pissed.
Hold on, here's my response to that. Oh, hella tight. That's my response to that.
Yeah, right.
Anybody who's read the book will know that part.
He saw that dialogue. He's like, "What are you doing?"
He's like, "No, that's you. That's how you talk." Okay, in my mind, that's how you sound. But to go back one more, a really, 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 I feel like criminally underappreciated book was Compass. Can you just tell me, it doesn't have to be long-winded because I want to talk a little bit more about Torrent Hero, but
yeah.
How did that come together, and And why? Like, how many times do I have to buy that book and just send it to people for them to be like, "What? I didn't even know a book like this exists." Like like Middle Eastern, like medieval times. Like,
Yeah.
just tell us a little bit about Compass, man. That book was freaking awesome.
Trying to think of how that project came together. If I'm not mistaken, when we announced the Last Siege, we did it at one of the Last Image Expos.
Mm-hmm.
And I caught up with Greg when I was there, and Greg said, I have some friends who have come up with this premise for a comic that I think is really good, and we've been building this idea together. I'm involved in it. I'm not writing it, but I've been just kind of shepherding it along, and I think you would be a good fit for the art if you'd be interested in it. And he sent me.
And I want to stop you to just say, Greg. This is Greg Rucka. Everybody.
Yes, Greg Rucka. My frequent collaborators. We did Stumptown together, and so we had been talking about doing something else. But he says, "Yeah, I got this idea. What do you think?" And I just thought it was rad. I thought it was just, and again, something I had not done before. I had a period where I felt like I was doing history-related type stuff. I had like a few years where a lot of the projects were rooted in history in one way or another, but they were all pretty different from each other. And I felt like Compass would feel more like a pulp story, kind of a pulpy action. I mean, not really a thriller, but I guess in the same way that like it's definitely an Indiana Jones type character, but set in history where they're not looking for historical relics; they're looking for knowledge. They're looking for artifacts that have power. And it was a totally awesome book. That's another book that came. I had crazy timing where everything kind of hit COVID around this, like because COVID lasted, the change of schedules where things were shut down, and then it brought back. That book landed in such a weird way that like you're right. It was kind of underappreciated. I felt like it was also kind of underappreciated, but it was an awesome book and I highly recommend it. That's another project we've talked about going back to. The two writers had sent me a note recently about ideas for a second volume that I think would be really cool, but I don't know if we'll end up doing that or not. It'll just depend on time more than anything. But I love the story, love the characters. It was an awesome book.
I just bought it.
Good. Yes, yes,
Nice.
Because Skip said Compass. I'm like, that sounds familiar, and then I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh snap! You sent me issue 1.
yes.
Literally mailed me issue 1.
It was a lot of the old guard team too. Like we had a lot of overlap with those creative teams. In fact, when we went to go do a story for that old guard anthology series, it was the same creative team. We just jumped over and did it. It was super fun. It's a good group of folks, and it was the first time I worked with a lot of them. But a lot of them already work together pretty frequently.
I love how issue 1. I mean, we've got 3, 4, 5 pages. There's no dialogue. This is really like Justin just kind of driving storytelling. And I mean, I probably shouldn't read while I try to have a conversation, but
It's compelling.
This is just amazing. Like this is cool. I know what I'm doing after this, but so I forgot my question going through this artwork. So I'll let Skip ask another before I jump back in here.
You got it. Okay, so that was that one, and then of course we currently have Torrent, as we talked about. Issue number 2 came out today. It is available. I read Stringers. I loved Stringers. I was already a fan of the Nightcrawler movie, and then we're talking about it, and you're like, my book Stringers, deals with the, it's kind of in that same area of interest.
Yeah, same world in a lot of ways.
Same world in a lot of ways. I am a sucker for Los Angeles crime underbelly stories. Like, I love Street Kings and what was it? End of Watch. And
I just watched that again the other day. Yeah. I think both of those are David Ayer movies, right? Like
yes. Both of them. End of Watch and Street Kings. Yeah.
Did he direct Street Kings? Maybe he just wrote it. I can't remember. I feel
he just wrote it. He didn't. I don't think he directed that one. I think he just wrote it.
I'm a huge fan of his stuff, and for the same reasons, right? Like I find those characters generally relatable. They're always interesting stories, and I feel like he does gritty in a way that is that feels honest, or it just doesn't feel like. Sometimes you read that stuff or watch that stuff, and you're like, eh. It's like a parody of what being like a hard case is. But those characters feel genuinely rounded out, but they're also hard case people, you know.
Absolutely. And, Mark, was able to just boom, get right in there and tell, a very similar thing with very sensible twists, really respecting the geography of where the story is told and how like air reports and all those different things come into play. So you guys synced so beautifully on that. I know that was like your second project working together, but when did you realize that, his stories and the parts of darkness that he taps into within humanity mixed with like your kinetic art, how you ink, how you use a lot of noir, a lot of blacks and stuff like that and splatters. When did you guys figure out that you guys were such a good pairing together?
I don't know. That's a good, I'd have to ask him that. I'd be curious to know how he'd respond to that. But, Mark, I feel like writes stories that have weight, and I think art-wise that grab generally, just broadly speaking. I mean, I love a story that has real weight, and one thing he does really well is interjects humor in a way that he punctuates it just right in a way to where it can be funny, but it doesn't take from the weight of what's happening. And instinctually, I think I gravitate to stories like that, and I think. Hopefully, I think the art suits that type of storytelling. It's that way in Torrent, definitely, too. I mean, I think that's the one quality I see in all three of the projects we've worked on, But, at the beginning, when we first worked together, I was just so excited to be doing anything that I'm like, all right, I'm making comics, like, this is awesome. But as time has gone on, I've come to really appreciate how much I enjoy working with him, just largely because he is such a good collaborator. Like, he's always willing to hear an idea. When he's committed, he's like when he's in 100%. It's a very similar mentality. So when we're working, it feels very fluid, very easy, and it's enjoyable. Which honestly, for comics, if you're not really loving it, there's just no point. It's such a comics is such a time intensive thing. Drawing comics in particular, that if you're not really enjoying what you're doing, it's you're not going to get. Well, I don't think you're even going to get through it. Like you'll just burn out after a while. So you find yourself collaborating with people you really want to do things with, and as time goes on, you get to know who those people are and be open to new folks. But it makes it a lot easier when you sign up on a project with somebody who you know is gonna deliver something great, is fun to work with, and is willing to hear whatever crazy ideas you're gonna shoot back at them.
So rad.
Yeah.
So this is like a two-parter. So I'll start with the simple one, right? How would you describe your art style?
I'll tell you what. I don't. The thing I've been focused on recently in the last couple of years a lot is really looking at movement and energy. I want those things I want the fun to carry across. Like even when you're drawing something that does have that weight, I don't want it to get. I don't want it to be too static. I just think comics. Part of the awesome thing about comics is that sense of movement. Mm-hmm. And I hope that carries through for other people, but it's definitely the part that I'm focused on when I'm working on it. And when I work on a project like Torrent, that is constantly moving, it's big moments, and the big moments punctuate the small moments and vice versa. The trick is finding ways to slow that down effectively and finding ways to make that go fast effectively that really control the pacing in a way that carries. And the cool thing is, like, working with Rico makes that easy because Rico's colors have that same energy. Like, it's, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is when you're building these projects, then you start building your teams and you start picking people that you think, oh, I'll bet they would really be a big help in making this thing an even better idea than what we start with. And so we've just been blessed. I mean, it's a really good creative team. And then Keith, who does letters and design, I've worked with him since I first started at Oni. He was their like main graphic designer back in the day. We've known each other for years. And so getting to all work together, just when you pick a team and you just know everybody and you just know what they're capable of and that they suit the material you're working on, it just makes it go super smooth and it's easy to be proud of the finished product,
Nice.
Definitely. And 5-second commercial real quick. Shout out to Rico Renzi, No Longer Mint. That's where
right.
you can find shirts like this. Martin the Manhunter. Get yourself some Rico Renzi. And back to you, Kix.
That's beautifully done, man. Real professional.
That is great. I got to get Rico to pay for a sponsorship spot now.
He's your neighbor. It won't be hard.
Right. But not. It's fun. I want to ask. I wanted to ask that because I like to see if like my assumptions are correct, right? Because what I notice about your art is very much the fluidity, right? Like you really move the reader through the page, and it's like I feel like my eyes move fast when they need to, and they stop when they need to. It's like I
Yeah.
can tell, like, okay, wait, this is important. What's going on? All right.
Yeah.
And then we're back to the action and so on. So besides the fluidity and just how much movement there is in the art, the other thing that really stands out to me are the expressions. Like this page right here, like
Yeah.
it's just like the way you're throwing these emotions onto these characters, like again and often there's not a lot of words being spoken, and it's really just we're just gonna let this page do the talking. that
Oh, thank you.
that is a quality that is just really I admire a lot. I just
Oh,
think
right
that's
on.
really cool.
Yeah. I mean, that acting is another thing. I mean, I don't know. I think like you said, you're at backgrounds in music. You're always trying to find new ways to do stuff, trying to get better at the things you already do. And I feel like acting, energy. I think that's the stuff that makes comics really neat. And if you can find a ways to show that off, then you're doing comics a service. You know, if it was just a bunch of photographs, it'd be super boring. I don't work very photorealistically. I think it can be cool to do that under some circumstances, but the comics that I enjoy the most feel drawn. I want the energy of the line and the fun of it to carry across, and the acting and all that kind of thing is very important. Same with texture. I remember when I first started, I tend to lean into more graphic. I like very, a lot of folks will break comics artists into a couple of different schools. Like if you grew up in the Kirby, that big energy Kirby, or like whether you were a guy who liked the Toth type, very graphic, simple. My natural instinct is to do that, more simple, more graphic. But as I continued drawing, I looked back at the things I draw and felt like it just feels too static. It feels too. So I try and find ways to use those graphic shapes, but in a way that doesn't slow the page down. And I think marrying those two things has been a big focus of mine this last few years. Just trying how to use the black, but not have it be so weighted down so heavily that it makes the stuff seem unrelatable or too still.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's funny. I'll sit there and nerd out over every brush stroke, right, on something like a Toth or like a JP Leon, right?
Oh, man, and yeah, JP Leon, one of my absolute favorites. I mean, just absolutely admire, love that dude's art. It's crazy. R.I.P. man, that guy was the best. I met him at a show one time years ago when I was first trying to break in, and he was I showed him my portfolio. The portfolio collection of art was so bad, and he was so nice about it that I just couldn't believe it. And then he sat and gave me like 15, 20 minutes of time looking through his own art. He had a bunch of his comps, and like he was so generous with his time. But separate of his personality, what an artist, man. Just incredible. I was looking through that Winterman Artist Edition recently, and it's the big scans of the original pages. Mm-hmm. And I was doing the same thing you're talking about, just nerding out all these strokes. Like he somehow uses minimalism in a way that doesn't ever seem boring, but he can get a face down to a few lines, and you're just like, wow, how does it still read so clearly? Incredible.
Right. That's insane.
So talented. I still haven't been able to bring myself to read that Christmas edition of Batman and Catwoman. I got it in there. I still haven't been able to. But man, the covers that he did for Savage Things for Ibrahim and them.
Oh yeah, dude, yeah.
I still look at those covers and they are just ridiculously like intense and like the laid out and the perspectives. Man, JPL was just a revelation.
It absolutely, man. When I remember buying Winterman in the store, I don't know when they came out. I guess it would have been probably 90s. But it was like a 4 or 5 issue series, and they were spaced out. I don't know if they were late or that's just the way they planned it. But like in those days, you didn't have solicits. I mean, I'm sure they existed, but like I didn't have a computer. We were talking like I was a kid. And then I'd go to my shop and I'd see the new one there, and I'd freak out, and I would just the original versions of those issues are all like, dog-eared and beaten down from just being look through over and over. But I admire his mark making so much. What an incredible artist.
Absolutely. All right, so I tend to do this, right? I try to avoid spoilers, and I end up just avoiding talking about a comic altogether. So we're gonna bring this conversation back around to Torrent again, and just for those who are watching or listening, what is Torrent about? And I guess we can just talk about this. I'm trying so hard not to spoil this story, but let's just talk about what Torrent's about, so people know if they want to buy it or not.
Yeah, Torrent is about a superhero. Like the original question, I feel like the way Mark framed it was, what does it take to make a B-level superhero like, say, the Spider-Man into the Punisher? Like, how far do you have to push somebody who's good and has a good life into just completely becoming the worst version of themselves, you know? Somebody who's no longer, like, where is the line between hero get drawn in that scenario? And our hero, Crackerjack, is pushed to that limit right in the first issue. It's not. I don't think it's spoiling it to say awful things happen to her, and she is put in a position where she has to do something about it. And then she starts to get slowly be pushed in a position where does she have to or does she just want to at this point? Like she just is. She's furious. She becomes so vengeful that it just overwhelms her. And I mean that's really what the story is. That evolution of what happens in that scenario and where does that take you? What dark places does that take you to?
Right. Yeah. So issue 1 starts off, like you said, with incredible tragedy, or at least ends that way. And then by issue 2, it's like, all right, let's try to sort of pick up some of the pieces. Let's build off of this. And what I love about issue 2 is just seeing her cynicism grow.
Yeah.
Right. She's like, look, the cops aren't going to do anything. Look, I guess we can call them whatever, the Justice League, the Avengers, whatever we want to call the superhero team stand-ins. It's like they're inept. They're not really helping. And you're seeing how she's slowly like, look, whatever's about to happen is about to happen my way.
Yeah.
And gosh, it is such an interesting ride.
Yeah, she's still making that effort, especially in 2. I mean, she still wants to make that effort to try and do it right. But it's, sometimes things are not that cut and dry. They're just not that simple as much as we want them to be. And honestly, when you're pissed enough, you stop caring at a certain point, right? Like, we've all been that angry where you're just like, I know what I'm supposed to do. I don't want to do this shit, I'm mad. I'd rather, I know I can do this another way, and I'll feel better about it. I don't know. It's not right though.
Yeah, no, honestly, and I think that is what is so compelling, and that's what a lot of my internet comic circle that I've turned on to the book, and they are becoming evangelists of the book. That like how you guys were able to express where she was, how she got there. And I think also it was a very good storytelling technique. And I don't feel like it's always so effective, but when it is, it really works. How y'all did some in media res and kind of gave a glimpse of where she ends up and then walks us through how she got there, was perfect for the story. But in issue 2, once you see where she's gotten pushed to, her back is already against the wall and she slid down the wall and she's sitting down. Yeah. But then to see the sides of the walls start to close in on her and the places that she would normally look to help and to first help and then to ask for help, how those are closing in on her. You're really starting that's what makes it so believable in the verisimilitude of how this character, like you said, can start to turn.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It makes me excited for you to read issue 3. I mean, I'm sure this is true of a lot of books, but this one in particular, I feel like the tension level starts to really ramp. Like you start to just be like, oh, this is where we're going. This is nasty. Really kicks into gear from I think 3 forward, and I'm excited for you guys to read it. I think you'll be into it. It's pretty. It was a very fun book to draw. Like just I love action, and that was one thing we talked about. Is like the thing that this book has to pay off on is it has to you have to be surprised, and the action has to be feel like the stakes are high, and the stakes just feel like they get higher and higher from issue to issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's one thing that certainly comes through. Like every page turn, you're like, yo, what is about to happen? And I love the title, Torrent, which just kind of implies, look, like everything is coming down. Like,
Yeah.
this is not gonna be some gradual, like, no, like.
Yeah, I remember. I think the definition of torrent was like the release of a overwhelm. I forget the exact definition, but it was that release of like something that can't be contained anymore. I thought that was such a perfect that Mark had already from the start. Like that was the title he already had, and it was a bummer because it matches torrent, like which is what people do with comics anyway. I'm sure it makes searching it a little like one step harder, but you know what? Like ultimately, we got to do the thing we think is cool and just not worry about the rest of it. But I thought it was a great. I think it's a great name. Yeah, and I think that name applies. Like something we've talked about is doing books down the road that keep like either like potentially just retaining the same name and just picking up new stories because I feel like that can be applied a lot of different ways. You know, like if the book were called Cracker Jack, the story would have to be entirely about Cracker Jack. I feel like the whole time.
True.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, it can kind of be its own series and not have to stay with one particular character, but it does maintain the theme. But you can tell totally different stories, totally different scenarios.
Yeah,
keep it fresh with a new set of people. Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
Well, look, whoever's watching and or listening, if you needed a reason to buy Torrent besides the fact that Skip and I pulled Justin out of hiding to talk about it, that's how much we enjoyed it. The story is great, like I said, through the 2 issues that are out as of recording. And the art is amazing. Like, I mean, I've described it quite a few times. It's really kinetic. It's really fluid, but you pause when you need to pause. Like it's not just this is not to put down any artist or anything, right? But I know there's times when you're reading like indie books and it just feels rushed or it feels like it was enough to get the idea on the page.
Yeah.
In a way. This isn't that. So I'd highly recommend grabbing it. So how many issues is the series so far?
It's 5. Well, there's 2 out
issues
now, and there'll be 5 total. Yeah. This also another thing that's cool about this issue is cover B. The variant cover was Ramon, our pal Ramon Villalobos did cover B, and then cover C. We're doing these homages, and Rick Leonardi is doing all the cover Cs from this point forward. Every issue, he's doing like an homage to his classic covers, and again, because I'm totally a kid who grew up on these Marvel books. Like a lot of them are those. He's homaging like X-Men covers, Daredevil, Spider-Man 2099, the stuff that he's kind of best known for, and doing like we're basically just doing like our characters in a similar composition, similar colors. Yeah, it's rad. They look totally awesome. I'm such a fan of his. Yeah, like that's the one for number 3. That's the cover for 3.
That
which
is
the
awesome.
Spider-Man 2099 one.
That's fly. Sometimes I have to pretend like I know how to use technology.
This was like a cover. It was like a Daredevil and Wolverine cover from the '80s, like late '80s.
Man.
I could find I have to send you the originals, like the original images. I don't think 5 has been. I don't think they've solicits for 5 have come out yet. Yeah, there's Ramon's cover right there for issue 2. I was telling Ramon every time my wife sees that cover, she's like, "Man, that's really good." I'm like, and the way she says it, I'm always like, "Hey, the other covers are good too." But she absolutely loves his cover. Well, his art's wonderful. In fact, I guess you can't see it from this angle, but I have the original up on the wall. He gave it to me at the most recent Stockton Con.
Oh no way! That's all, dude.
It's super nice, man.
These covers.
He's the best.
And so, but that last cover that BJ Kicks was just showing. I got a feeling, because I know Rico did a lot of the coloring, but that looks like Brad's coloring. Is that correct?
Not on... Wait, you're talking about...
the cover A that was dressed up,
3.
I think, for issue 3.
Oh, cover A for issue 3, yeah. No, that's Rico's. Rico did all... The only cover Brad colored was Danny's, because Danny and Brad worked together a lot.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
and
Which I
it's,
can't. I
you
can't
are
wait
right
for
though.
that
Brad
one.
and I work together a lot too, but this is Rico's series, so I used all the colors. Yeah.
Okay, because so the green looks like
Uh
Rico, and once I look in the top left, it does. But the bottom right, you know how
huh.
Brad like
Yeah.
mixes those purples, those fuchsias, and all that
Yeah.
stuff together. I was like, that's a Brad corner right there. So you know what? I'm just gonna say Rico was shouting out the homie Brad in the bottom right corner. That's how I'm gonna play it.
That's funny.
Well, look,
Yeah, they're
man.
both. That's awesome. Man. I've been blessed. Like that's another thing too. Is you're doing Create on Comics, you get to really partner up with folks. I mean, you're the one choosing your team, so you just want to work with people you know are going to deliver. And fortunately, I do, man. I feel very lucky. Super lucky.
Absolutely, big time. I gotta get a cover A from you for issue number 2 because I got the Leonardi cover and I got Ramon's cover, and I went to 2 different shops because I'm trying to spread the
Oh,
love
nice.
around, let people know
Thanks,
we're
man.
buying them. But I gotta get
I
a
got
cover
I got
A
one for
from
you at the
you.
house, man. The Rick Leonardi thing. Like Rico knew him as the one that put us in contact, and it was his idea to do the
No
homage.
way.
Yeah. And I think he's at Heroes Con too, if I'm not mistaken. Like this year, I think Rico. As a matter of fact, I don't know this with 100% certainty, but Rick's been announced at Heroes. Rico definitely is going because he used to be really involved with that show. I'll be there this year. I think Mark might be there too. Guggenheim. I think he's going to be there also. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. And then one of the other variant cover artists, I don't think it's been solicited. Or I mean, it's gone to solicit, but I don't think it's come out yet. But Maria Wolf did the cover for issue 5, the variant cover for issue 5, and I think she's going to be there too, which is pretty
No
cool.
way.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Kicks, make some room on the couch for me. I'm coming in Justin's briefcase.
Word.
I was born in North Carolina. I'm coming back.
Baby, I'm coming home.
Yeah, man. I'll be there.
I'm excited. I'll be there too. This will be fun.
It'll be cool. I'll definitely come by your table.
Yeah, it's been years since I've done that show, and I've been looking forward to it. In fact, I think I'm taking I rarely am able to get my wife out to a show. Not because she loves to travel, but like usually she has to work or whatever. But she's a teacher, and this year she's at a school where she does get summers off, like a traditional teacher.
Nice.
And I'm like, cool, we'll come out, we'll take a little trip. It'll be fun. I'm going to drag her out there. Probably hottest. Hey, it's going to be hot though, huh? In June and
Yeah, June in
Charlotte,
Charlotte.
fun, right?
Charlotte will be no joke.
Yeah, that's all right. It'll be a nice change anyway for a little bit.
Yeah, hey, we're in the Sacramento area, Justin. Let's not act like we're not. We know those 112-degree days. I mean, no humidity though.
The
No
humidity is
though.
something else. It's that I was raised in Northern California, the Bay Area. I was spoiled with the weather for a long time, and moving to this area, like Sacramento area, definitely much hotter, but it's still not that humid. That thickness is not. We don't get that here.
Yeah, like it's weird when you walk outside and it feels like an oven. Like,
Yeah.
That's
My brother's in
that's-
Florida right now, and I was like, oh, maybe since we're going to be in Charlotte, like that's like most of the way there, maybe we'll come down, we'll just catch an extra flight, come down to see you. He goes, bro, you know how hot it's going to be when you get here? You're not going to want to be in Florida. I can tell you with complete certainty, that's not a good use of your time. Oh, my goodness.
Absolutely. Man, well, Justin, I just want to thank you for your time. And just this has been awesome. You've been a great first
likewise.
guest.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. It's nice talking to you.
No problem, man. So, Torrent issue 2 is out right now. By the time you hear this, maybe issue 3 is on FOCs. I was just looking; it's not on FOC this week, so
It's
probably coming
FOC
up.
next week. I think the book's on a 5-week schedule, so I have an extra week in there.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. So yeah, grab that. Go ahead and pre-order the trade whenever you see that coming up because you're gonna want this book. So
Thank you.
no problem. And while we've got you, is there any place you want to shout out, anything, or how your fans can reach you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but if you go to my website, is justingreenwoodart.com. If you search my name, you'll find it, and from there you can catch any of the social medias that I'm on, and shoot me a question. Let's chat.
Awesome.
Bring me out of my hermitude into the world.
Hey, that's my job because we got some coin op to go to. We got a
that's true.
Stockton Kings game where we got to go pull Ramon out to go to.
We got work to do.
Just shoot him some questions and then say, hey, go get out the house with Skip I'm gonna pull you and Mel out. I'm gonna come watch the kids. Y'all could go on the date night.
We got to get out
Craziness,
there.
skip in your area.
That is true. We need to. We really. I mean, we've lived in this area long enough. We need to get out and start really poking around because we. I mean, for as long as we lived out here now, which I think at this point it's been 6-7 years, I feel like we just are in our little city, but we just need to really get out and start looking around.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Word. Well, I appreciate it, guys. You guys have been watching the Comics Are Dope podcast on YouTube or listening wherever podcasts are sold. I appreciate that. And we will see you guys in another episode real soon. Until then, stay awesome, stay classy, and make sure you're reading something dope. Peace.